Welcome to the KPW podcast, and joining me today is Brett Hawn, a sports journalist based in New Jersey, who happens to be a New York Jets fan and a New York Mets fan. So, welcome, Brett. How you been?
KP, the Jets make me absolutely miserable. But being a New York sports fan, you're used to, especially the Mets and Jets, who are like the little brother teams, so to speak. You're used to it. But in general, life's good. And thank you for having me back on.
Awesome. Let's start with baseball first because the World Series wrapped up last week. It was the Dodgers beating the Yankees in 5 games, and interestingly, the Yankees defeated the Dodgers only once in the World Series, while the Mets were able to pull off 2 wins against LA in the NLCS. Let's start with the Mets there. So they made it all the way to the NLCS, ran out of arms or ran out of steam, after they beat the Phillies. So, in your mind, is that a successful season, or how would you define the Mets 2024 campaign?
Oh, it's a huge success. I mean, look, Gary Cohen in a social media caption and said from 0 and 5 to OMG. Now, I think that is an accurate representation of the season. I mean, the Mets at one point were 11 games under 500. I remember around that time, I was sitting here, like the rest of the sports media world, and kind of debating what the hell are we going to do with Pete Alonso? Because you knew his contract was up at the end of the season. He wasn't performing up to a standard that we Mets fans had grown accustomed to seeing, and we knew the Cubs had interest. So it was a matter of, okay, we're 11 games out of 500. We're it's early in the season, but like our team doesn't have any life. Do we trade away Pete before he signs away from us for nothing? Then Grimace happened. Grimace, I never thought in my life I'd be in love with something from McDonald's as much as I am Grimace. Okay. Grimace is the heart and soul of this year's team. He might be the heart and soul of the Mets, period. Mr. Met is a run for his money with Grimace. Okay. This man, this beautiful purple blob threw out the first pitch. And then from there, the Mets were the best team in baseball for 4 months. Snuck their way into the wild card, beating the Braves 2 out of 3. Only advancing past the Milwaukee Brewers off a clutch Pete Alonso homer in the bottom of I believe it was the bottom of the eighth, bottom of the ninth inning, the one game. They won
Top
three
of
to
the ninth,
two.
right?
It was bottom of the ninth. Okay, so it's bottom of the ninth, 3-2. They won. And from there, the Mets they got hot, man. The one thing I will say, though, is expecting a World Series, I always felt was a little out of reach. Now, did I get 2015 feelings from it when Mark Vientos was just slamming home run after home run? Yeah, of course. Watching Francisco Lindor finally live up to his contract was amazing. It was the best feeling in the world. I was a Francisco. I wasn't a hater, but I talked so much trash, man, and I'm so glad he made me shut up. So, in terms of the Mets season, I feel like overachieving is never a failure. I always knew kind of going into the playoffs that our starting pitching against a San Diego Padres or a Los Angeles Dodgers is always going to be a test, especially with shaky middle relief bullpen options and starters who are some are kind of relying on the defense more so than others. Um, so it was always going to be a tough task, but the Mets being able to take 2 games from a team in which that 1 in 5 in the World Series is a huge success. And I think the Mets are, with 179 million coming off the books, are poised to be huge spenders in free agency and only get better.
So basically, beating the Phillies in the division series was like basically their World Series, if you will.
Absolutely. Dude, we never played them in the playoffs before, which shocked me when I read it. And the first series we played against them, we smoked them. Yeah. I went into that series thinking, all right, we just have to tie it in Philly. And we did. But like I expected the Mets to knock up Aaron Nola. And I'm sorry, I expected the Mets to lose against Zach Wheeler. Excuse me. They shockingly, I mean, not shockingly, when he was in the game, they didn't do anything. But then after the fact, that they were able to pull out a win just showed the resilience of this Mets team in resilience in late innings, excuse me, this team has shown all year. And then to go out there and just mollywop Aaron Nola, I mean, we saw that coming. Come on, like Aaron Nola is like, it's Aaron Nola. Like he's good against every team but the Mets. And then to win that series the way we did was amazing. It's the best feeling in the world. Obviously, from that point, when you're in the CS, you're like, okay, like I want to make the World Series. We want more. But at the same time, I didn't even expect to make it out of the NLDS. So that was already a success for me if we lost there, but we didn't. So.
Now, Brent, moving on to the World Series, I don't know how much attention you paid to it because the Mets weren't in it. But what are your thoughts about Game 1 in LA and then Game 5 at Yankee Stadium? Because like those two games basically, changed the World Series. The Yankees probably, if things had gone their way, would have been up 3-2 after the fifth game. So did you pay attention to any of that? What are your thoughts of the first game and game five?
Yeah, so being in New Jersey, like there's more Yankees fans that I know than Mets. So in a way, when they're just talking about it, you're sucked in. And being a fan of Major League Baseball, I had to like follow it. Did I watch many of the games? No. But I watched the highlights. I mean, game one, the Yankees had a very winnable situation. Um, you know, they're I don't I'm trying to remember what some of my friends were saying. I'm pretty sure like Clay Holmes is the one they put in the ninth inning, right? And they something like that. It was something with the pitching change that yeah, a lot of Yankees fans didn't like. And then that ultimately led to them walking it off with on Freddie Freeman's grand slam. Then game five, what a disaster class. I mean, it's bad enough that Aaron Judge can't hit in the playoffs. Then he like drops a routine fly ball and they score five in that frame. Like, come on. That's Bush League. Garrett Cole's not running to the back, running to cover the bag when like every pitcher on the planet is taught that if it's hit to shallow infield on the first baseline, that you are supposed to run to the bag. Like, I didn't go past T-ball, but but I know that. Like, I'm not saying I do it better than him by any stretch, but like Garrett Cole should have known. He's been a world-class pitcher in this league for over a decade. You don't just stop. The play's always in motion until a signal by the umpire, you know? So the Yankees shot themselves in the foot. And it's sad in a way because I don't like LA at all. And I really wanted the local team to pull it out. But what can you do? It's over.
That's right. What's not over is the Jets season, and we are speaking, of course, at the midway point of the NFL season, and a strange month in October because the New York Jets fired a head coach, and then they um, picked up Aaron Rodgers' favorite receiver. They, lost 5 games in a row. So, what's your sense of the New York Jets season up to this point?
It's
Are
a
they
very
still
low.
in
That's
it?
a that's a very loaded question, but I will answer it. Um, I gotta breathe first. I'm sorry. So, um, for starters, right? You know, all's well in Jets Kingdom. We were 2-1. Aaron Rodgers looked fantastic, against New England. Not a surprise. New England's a poverty franchise right now. Like it doesn't surprise me at all. Okay. Like I was chilling in Norway. I didn't watch the game, because it was like 2 in the morning their time. But I woke up in the morning, I watched the highlights. I'm like, damn, is this what we're gonna get all season out of Aaron? Right? And then the losing streak happened. Greg Zuerlein happened. The fact that Greg Zuerlein is still on this team when you should on if a kicker's hitting 65% of their field goals through 4 games, it's time to make a switch. The problem with Woody Johnson and the New York Jets under his leadership is they give guys too long of a leash. They always do this. And when they do let go of guys, it's always at the wrong time. For example, you mentioned Robert Saleh. Do I agree firing him was the right decision? Yes. The timing of it was horrible. They should have either done it at the end of this season or the end of last, preferably the end of last. We knew this coaching staff did not have what it takes from a play calling standpoint and a discipline standpoint to be effective on offense. The defensive production's been proven, and it's good once again this year. The run defense is a little choppy, I'll admit. It has been for a few years now. But there's been no question about the secondary and linebacker play. So defense, fine, whatever. I'm very happy with the defense. I have been for the last few years. But keeping Nathaniel Hackett on play calling duties to begin the season and keeping Saleh at the helm, I don't know. I wasn't like as low on Saleh as a lot of people were, but I also was very cautiously optimistic. So I don't know. To see him get fired, I didn't mind it, but I hated the timing of it. And I hated that Woody Johnson didn't consult anybody in the front office, that he just thinks he's the almighty. You've Listen, buddy, you've owned the team for 25 years. We've only been to 6 playoff games. Sell the team. Dan Snyder sold the team, and look at the new Commanders, man. The new Commanders are awesome. They just traded for Marshawn Lattimore the other day at the deadline. They have Jaden Daniels, rookie quarterback. They're making great signings. They're drafting well. I mean, like, look at the Mets when they sold from the Wilpons. Cohen's, he's opened up the pocketbook. The Mets have two seasons in the playoffs in the last 4 years. With the Wilpons, you get one good season every 5. So the Mets really need a change of ownership. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who Tweedledee and Tweedledum, aka Woody and Chris Johnson, hire. It's not going to change. And the Jets being this bad doesn't surprise me. The Jets being this bad after acquiring Devontae Adams doesn't surprise me. I was the only person in my circle saying the Devontae Adams trade is not going to change anything. Jets are still going to suck. And they still suck.
What's funny is that same week, the Buffalo Bills made a bigger splash by getting Amari Cooper, and that trade, well, is probably going to make a bigger impact as the Andre Hopkins pick up by the Chiefs, sometime later, like just last week, looks like it's paying dividends. So, are you saying that the Jets are not going to make the playoffs?
And, probably not, man. Dude, you know what? The other thing that bothers me about the Jets fan base too is that we win one game, it's like, all right, we're going 11-6 now. We're making the playoffs. It's like, no, dude. We won 1 out of our last 5. We lost to the Broncos 10-9, and we lost to the poverty Patriots. How? How do we lose to the Patriots? I don't care about the Broncos. The Broncos have a world-class defense. That was all Zerline's fault. Okay. I don't think that was anybody else's fault. But how do we lose to the Patriots? Patriots are clearly a rebuilding club. They have a rookie quarterback. They have no skill position players. Their defense is barren. How do we lose to the Patriots? That's when I knew the season was done. The moment I read the box score that they lost to them, I knew the season was cooked. We're not making the playoffs. And I hope everybody gets fired. Everyone, including Woody. I hope they find Woody guilty of some kind of conspiracy for like some kind of fraud, like wire fraud or something, so they can just get him out. Like, or some Diddy type allegations just to get him out of here. Because it's ridiculous. Like how bad this of an owner this man is. And what's even more ridiculous is how he's not the worst owner in the NFL. But to me, he is, because he's running my team into the ground.
It's pretty unfortunate because I was going to say Zerline cost the Jets at least 2 games this season, including the one you mentioned to Denver. But they did break the 5-game losing streak by beating Houston on Thursday night. And it was a comedy of errors in the first half, but they somehow managed to come back and beat the Texans, who, of course, were without Diggs. What did you think about that play with the I guess it was a touchback? Fumble at the goal line. What did you think of that? When you saw that, you thought this was going to be a 6th straight loss, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't ruling it out. I wasn't ruling out a loss, a win or loss yet. But at the same time, I see why Malachi Corley's getting used so sparingly now. Because what the hell? That was the best misdirection play I think Todd Downing or anybody on that Jets staff has ever called up. And what does Corley do? Celebrates too early. Like, I've always and like this is old school, I get it, but like I've always been the mantra of like run it in the end zone first, make sure your feet are on the ground and you see like your team's colors, and then or the away team's colors wherever you're playing, and then do whatever the hell you want. You know what I mean? This crossing before the goal line stuff, like come on, that's common, that's awareness, that's spatial awareness, man. Like I saw that and like I was watching with a few of my buddies that had them over and they're all laughing. I'm just sitting there in silence. I was laughing a little bit. I'm like, you know what, dude, I can't even be mad at this anymore. This is like just a synopsis of how the entire year is going. So yeah, Malachi Corley, hope he develops in the future, but right now he's just that was horrible.
Is Mike Williams done? Because he was called out by Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers was responding to a question by the media, but it was a dropped. It was a bad route and ended up in a game sealing interception. I forgot if it was against Pittsburgh or against somebody else. But yeah, so you know, is like how do you see Aaron Rodgers playing the rest of the season? And what else can you say about the rest of the second half of the season?
Well, for one thing, I mean, Mike Williams is a Steeler now, so it's pretty evident that they can never, they can never get the chemistry together. And honestly, I feel bad for Mike Williams. I mean, he's coming off a torn ACL. He's a really good player. He just wasn't getting utilized properly. So I wish him nothing but the best. Um, to answer the second part of your question about Aaron Rodgers, it's pretty clear. If Jets fans haven't figured out already and they don't live under a rock, he's not the same player. It's clear as day. He's 40 years old. Tom Brady proved to everybody that there's levels to this. There's a reason why he's the greatest quarterback of all time. Not everybody performs better the older you get. I mean, man was 44 and slung like 5,000 passing yards and won a Super Bowl. So, like, not everybody's created equal. Aaron Rodgers clearly, off the Achilles injury, unfortunately, is he was a statue already, and now he's really a statue to the point where like our run game is so inconsistent because like teams aren't biting on his fakes anymore because he can barely move. That doesn't help the play calling either. And I'm not excusing the play calling for being egregious, but I'm just saying that makes it harder on them. Um, but I don't know. See how the second half of the season is going. I don't know. I mean, I I just hope the Jets commit to a strategy. If they play well enough to and they lock in, they win a bunch of games and sneak into the wild card, great. But please don't pull a typical Jets move and finish middle of the pack. Don't make the playoffs, get a decent draft pick. Like if you're going to commit to the tank, commit to the tank. There's some good prospects going in this draft, so we'll see. I don't know. With the Jets are a team you can't make a prediction on. I've learned, so
Now, of
I'm
course,
just
you
following.
cover the NFL as well, so I'm sure that you do follow other teams. I just want to ask you this one. So, earlier in the season, when former Jets quarterbacks Geno Smith and Sam Darnold were doing really well, right? Of course, Geno Smith with the Seahawks and Darnold with the Minnesota Vikings, they were doing pretty well at the start of the season, but now they've come back a little bit back down to earth. So, do you find any joy in the fact that they are struggling because they're former Jets quarterbacks, or do you wish them well, that kind of thing? Because again, like those guys used to play for the New York Jets, and now, of course, being starters elsewhere. What are your thoughts?
I mean, well, I'll start with Geno Smith. I've always loved Geno Smith. Um, I when he was with the Jets, the physical talent was clear as day. He just didn't have a grasp of how to read an NFL defense yet. So I knew with him it was going to take time, and unfortunately the Jets just didn't have time, so they had to part ways with him. But I mean, I watch him make some of these deep bombs. Don't forget the Jets with a rookie Geno Smith went 8-8 in 2013. Like they like Geno made them competitive. And Geno is a guy, I mean, you see it now. It still has a laser arm. He can make plays with his legs when he has to. He can read an NFL defense at a above average level now. And he's a winning quarterback because of it. So I actually hate that that they are kind of struggling right now because I'm rooting for the Seahawks. I'd love to see the Seahawks surprise people. In terms of Sam Darnold, I was one of the members of the very small contingent of Jets fans who wish we just gave him another year rather than drafting Zach Wilson. So, um, you know, they unfortunately didn't. You know, he went to Carolina, played okay. Obviously, he went to San Fran. Then he went over to Minnesota where he's starting this year because of JJ McCarthy's season-ending injury, and he's playing lights out. I'm really happy for him. He always needed a top flight receiver. And you can say this about any quarterback. You know, you're the product of the weapons around you. Who were Sam Darnold's targets? Quincy Enunwa, right? Jeff Cumberland, right? Bilal Powell before the neck injury, who I really miss. I love Bilal Powell, but Bilal Powell out of the backfield, right? Ken Brell Tompkins, like come on, come on, you know. So I'm very happy for both of them. I love Darnold. I love Gino. I can't stand Zach Wilson. I'm so glad he's buried on the Broncos depth chart, and I hope he's out of the league next year. But that's about it. That's all I got.
All right, we're speaking with Brett Hawn, a sports journalist based out of New Jersey, and a Jets fan and a Mets fan. A couple more things before we let you go, Brett. Always glad to be talking with you. But the Kansas City Chiefs, they pulled one out again against Tampa Bay on Monday night. And are they going to be undefeated? Are they going to win their third straight Super Bowl? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Wait, repeat the question. I'm so sorry.
Oh, sorry. The Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs, they are what 8-0. Are they going to be undefeated? I don't personally don't think so, but you can convince me wrong. Are they going to be like making history by winning the Super Bowl for the third straight year? It's never been done before, obviously.
I don't think the Chiefs go undefeated either. I mean, they showed this last game that they have vulnerabilities. And Patrick Mahomes isn't playing up to an MVP standard by any stretch. I think he's barely even playing like a above average starter. Um, so do I think they're gonna go undefeated? No. However, I'm never gonna count them out for a Super Bowl appearance because they are 8-0 for a reason. They do what it takes to win. That defense is still lights out. They draft really well every year. Trading for DeAndre Hopkins should have been vetoed by the league because when Isaiah Pacheco comes back in a couple weeks, now you're gonna have Travis Kelce, D Hop, and Isaiah Pacheco back in that backfield, which is just ridiculous. And, I'm never going to count them out. However, with the way Detroit's been playing, I'd be massively surprised if they don't meet him in the Super Bowl. And I wouldn't be surprised if if they don't take the whole thing because Detroit is just on another level. Even the crazy thing is too, is that they lost Aiden Hutchinson like 3 weeks ago and they're still this damn good, like on defense, which is absurd. And they just traded for Zadarius Smith a couple days ago, who's a really solid pass rusher, was playing for the Cleveland Browns. And sky's the limit for them, really. They're a really good team, and I wouldn't be shocked if they take it home, but never count out the Chiefs either.
Right. Brett Hawn, thank you for joining us. What are you working on these days, and how can listeners keep up with your latest happenings, Brett?
That's fair. I'll admit I've been slacking on the podcast front. I mean, all my episodes are still out there, totally goated on Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, excuse me, and Google Play. Um, I do work for I work for a digital media company, Tap Into. So you can check out my LinkedIn profile. I do some journalism, but it's a lot more like marketing and advertising though. So I'm kind of more back end than I used to be.
Well, gonna get your start somewhere, but we do appreciate your time, Brett Hawn. That's Brett Hawn Hawn, and you can check him out on LinkedIn and on social media. So appreciate your time today, and of course, all the best with the Jets. I know there's a second half of the season to play, and we'll be in touch, and we'll see what happens in the baseball offseason. Always glad to be talking to you. Take care, Brett.
Thank you for having me, KP.